We all remember the moment Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon and declared it a small step for a man, but a giant leap for humanity. But very few people know what he secretly carried in his pocket during that historic walk. He had two tiny fragments with him, pieces that connected the moon landing to the first human flight. What were these fragments? And how were they tied to the earliest days of aviation? To understand this, we must travel back to the origins of powered flight, a journey that begins on the windy shores of North Carolina, in a seaside village known as Kitty Hawk. In the year 1900, two young men arrived there after traveling more than 1,000 kilometers from Dayton, Ohio. They weren't tourists. They had come with a dream to conquer the sky. The steady winds of Kitty Hawk and its forgiving soft sand made it the perfect place for risky flight experiments. These two young men were brothers, Wilbur Wright and Orville Wright. They lived in a small tent pitched right on the beach. Every day they tested gliders again and again, hoping to turn the dream of human flight into reality. Their passion for flight had been ignited in childhood, after seeing a little toy helicopter powered by a twisted rubber band. Watching that toy rise into the air convinced them that someday a real flying machine could lift a person as well. As adults, they ran a bicycle repair shop in Dayton. Their craftsmanship was well known, and their bicycles sold quickly. But their hearts were always set on aviation. With years of study and experimentation behind them, they eventually built an engineless aircraft, a glider. And to test it, they chose Kitty Hawk. They tied ropes to the glider and launched it like a kite, learning from every rise and crash. Locals gathered to watch, and even the team from the nearby life-saving station stepped in to offer help. The experiments were dangerous. Strong winds often sent the glider tumbling. Once, it even broke into pieces. But the brothers repaired it and continued. After weeks of effort, they returned home. A year later, they came again with improvements based on their earlier failures. They relocated their camp to a spot with better airflow, but the glider still refused to obey their commands fully. Disappointed, they left earlier than planned. Yet the people of Kitty Hawk were wrong if they thought the brothers would quit. In 1902, the Wrights returned with their most refined design yet. This glider finally behaved the way they wanted. It stayed balanced, moved smoothly, and responded to their control inputs. For the first time, they felt they were truly close to powered flight. By December 1903, the Wright brothers were back for a fourth time, this time carrying a new machine, the Wright Flyer. It wasn't just a glider anymore. It had a motor. It was humanity's first real airplane. On December 14th, they prepared for the inaugural attempt. To avoid any dispute over who would make the first flight, they flipped a coin. Wilbur won. A simple wooden rail had been built as a runway, but Wilbur pulled the nose up too sharply, causing the flyer to stall and crash shortly after takeoff. It needed repairs, which took the next 2 days. Then came December 17th, the day that would change the world. This time, Orville took the controls. Wilbur positioned the camera and instructed a nearby volunteer to press the shutter at the moment of flight. Holding on to the wing to stabilize the craft, Wilbur helped push it along the rail. The engine roared, the flyer surged forward, and lifted. At that exact moment, the camera captured history. At 10 a.m., Orville Wright completed the first powered, controlled flight in human history, 120 feet in 12 seconds. After 4 long years of failure, windstorms, crashes, and relentless work, mankind had finally risen into the sky. They conducted 3 more flights that same day. The final flight, made by Wilbur, lasted 69 seconds and covered 852 feet. But moments after landing, a powerful gust lifted the flyer, smashing it beyond repair. It would never fly again. The brothers sent a telegram home announcing their success. A small error slipped into the message. 57 seconds was reported instead of 69. When their father read it, he shouted with joy, "My boys have done it!" But the rest of the world wasn't convinced so easily. Only one newspaper printed the news, and even that article got the details wrong, claiming the plane flew 3 miles over waves. For a long time, most people believed the story was exaggerated or fake. Back in Dayton, the brothers continued testing improved flyers in a nearby field. By 1905, they had built a far better version and proven it in multiple flights. They tried to sell their invention to the U.S. Army, but the Army dismissed their claims. Part of the problem was the brothers themselves. They were shy, avoided reporters, and rarely sought publicity. Only a handful of locals and small newspapers knew the truth. But in 1908, they returned to Kitty Hawk for more tests. Journalists, hiding in the woods, reported what they saw. Soon, major newspapers in New York and Paris published the story. The U.S. Army finally agreed to see the aircraft. Paris invited them too. Wilbur went to France, where he flew before thousands of spectators in Le Mans. Meanwhile, Orville demonstrated the plane for the U.S. Army. But during one flight, tragedy struck. A propeller snapped mid-air, and the plane crashed. Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge died, the first casualty in aviation history. Orville survived but suffered severe injuries that affected him for life. Still, the Wrights pressed on. They toured Europe, performed for kings and dignitaries, and trained pilots. They even formed their own airplane manufacturing company in 1909. But business rivalry followed. Competitors copied their designs, forcing the brothers into long legal battles. In 1912, while on a trip to Boston, Wilbur fell ill with typhoid fever and died at only 45. His death devastated Orville, who gradually withdrew from aviation, sold his company shares, and lived quietly in Dayton until his death in 1948. Today, the brothers rest side by side. Monuments across Kitty Hawk honor their legacy, from the Wright Memorial Bridge to the National Memorial Visitor Center. 5 of their bicycles still survive, and the original Wright Flyer remains preserved in the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum. And now we return to Neil Armstrong. When he stepped onto the lunar surface, he carried with him 2 sacred artifacts from the world's first airplane: a small piece of fabric from the Wright Flyer's left wing, and a splinter of wood from its left propeller. The first flight and the first moon landing, connected across time, carried together in a single astronaut's pocket. Humanity dreamed of flying for thousands of years. The Wright brothers made the dream real, and from that first leap into the air, mankind eventually soared all the way to the moon.